Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Astro Consciousness channel. I'm Millie, and I am here to talk to you about the Cancer Solstice and the first of two full moons in Capricorn. But before I begin, I just want to thank you all so much for letting me know in the comments where you're from. Last week, I asked to let me know, and you guys are so gracious and kind to just indulge me on that. It's a lot of fun to know where people are tuning in from. I'm here in my apartment, and it's really interesting to think about someone else in another part of the world is watching what I'm recording here. It's really, I don't know, it's an interesting experience. So thank you all so much. As well as your subscribes and your shares, your likes. I've received messages from people telling me that they share the videos with their own communities because there are some coaches, facilitators, and healers on here. So that is so kind. Thank you all so, so much for that. But yeah, let's talk about the week that we're moving into. So let's recap a little bit, right? As always, let's recap a little bit. Last week was really interesting for a lot of people. I talked about how much activity there would be with Mercury. There was a lot of activity with Mercury, and the way that a lot of people experienced it were different ways, right? One of them was a lot of restlessness sleeping. And when you think about it, Mercury is in its home sign of Gemini. That's a very fast moving energy being activated by a lot of other things. Here we are in the opening of Jupiter in Gemini, which we feel in our bodies that, oh, it's different, right? So here in the Northern Hemisphere, we're starting to feel the heat. We're starting to feel, oh, summer's coming. We can feel it in our bodies. And I think that Gemini season kind of felt that way. I think that Jupiter entering Gemini kind of felt like, oh, it feels lighter. I want to do all the things. And I've even noticed myself being really intrigued and interested in learning new things. And it's almost like, but I want to learn this and I want to learn that. I've been consuming a lot of knowledge from a lot of great teachers here on YouTube and reading a lot of different books, and just feeling like so excited about it. So, on the one hand, right, it's great. It's Jupiterian in nature. The growth, the knowledge of Gemini brings us a lot of joy, a sense of expansion, a sense of understanding, a different point of view of life and the world and ourselves. And on the other hand, in true Jupiter fashion, it can be a lot, right? So again, the way that I experienced it is, okay, at some point I have to put things down. I have to stop reading so much. I have to let it digest. I have to I have to sleep, I have to cook, I have to clean, I have to do my other responsibilities. Um, which is fine, right? And those things help ground me. And so a lot of people were also receiving a lot of downloads, Mercury and Gemini, right? Mercury, a lot of downloads, a lot of, oh, that makes sense. Oh, I finally understand that in the way that I didn't before. I finally have that understanding that I needed about a conversation that probably took place in April, right? Which was the last time prior to last week that the Sun and Mercury met. But in April, they met during a Mercury retrograde in the sign of Aries. And last week, yes, the week of the 10th, um, was about the understanding of what started then, I understand differently now. So, various ways of this energy coming up. And for some people, some understanding, some downloads were pretty heavy. They were pretty heavy. They were what I like to call, um, once you've seen something, you can't unsee it. Once you understand something, you cannot understand it. And that implies making certain decisions about certain things. And for some people, in very important relationships. So it felt like a little bit of a roller coaster and just observing everyone and being in my own process. And it's true, it's just true Gemini energy. So with that said, how does that lead us into this week and into the Cancer solstice, the opening of a new season, right next to one of two full moons in the sign of Capricorn? Let's talk about it. So the Cancer solstice takes place on June 20th. And what that means is that the sun is entering the sign of Cancer. So it's important to understand the solstices and the equinoxes. Let me know in the comments which one's correct. Of every single year, right? They take place in what are known as the cardinal signs of the zodiac. And those cardinal signs of the zodiac are Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn. Those four signs of the zodiac represent the initiation of something, because in each one of those signs, we have the initiation of a season, of a station, right? The 0 degree of each of those signs are known as Aries points. And 0 degrees of Aries points in each of those signs, again, represents an initiation, a beginning that usually comes with an end, right? So as we enter the Cancer solstice here in the Northern Hemisphere, we are ending spring season and beginning the summer season. And then in the Southern Hemisphere or anywhere else in the world, different stations, different seasons, right? But you get my drift. There is an end and there is a beginning. Okay, those Aries points, when they are activated, in this case, this is going to be activated. The Aries point at 0 degrees Cancer is being activated by the full moon in Capricorn at 1 degree Capricorn. What that actually gives us the blueprint of the next 3 months, which is the entire summer season, for instance, here in the Northern Hemisphere. So we go from this solstice to the equinox, which will be the Libra equinox in September. And keep this in mind too, every single equinox and solstice marks a period of time, whatever the chart of that equinox or solstice marks the blueprint. It gives us the blueprint of the next 3 months. So that's the chart that tells us this is what the next 3 months are going to be about. This is what the next 3 months are going to look like. So in this Cancer solstice, it is impossible to talk about it without the full moon in Capricorn, again, which is one of two. And not only that, but it's happening, the first full moon in Capricorn of June 21st is happening at 1 degree Capricorn, and the second one on July 21st is happening at 29 degrees Capricorn. Of course, I'll talk about that full moon when we get closer to it, but from this moment in time, you understand that in the next month, something significant needs to come to an end, needs to change, and it's truly fundamental, okay? So what does this mean? So we have the full moon in Capricorn at 1 degree. So the moon is in Capricorn. When the moon is in Capricorn, and it is known to be not in a very good sign, because the moon is actually in the opposite sign of what it rules. The moon rules the sign of Cancer, and Cancer is directly the sign opposite of Capricorn. So when rulers do that, they're known to be very, very uncomfortable. It's known to be not a very good placement or a negative placement. I don't know how I feel about those very traditional interpretations of the zodiac, and probably the more traditional astrologers are are not going to agree with that. But here's why. I believe that every single placement, whether it's in detriment and fall, in its rulership and exaltation, all of them have a higher expression and a lower expression. And that higher or lower expression is where we come in. Because the fact of the matter is that all of this energy is neutral until we decide how to meet halfway with it. This is where I think the way that I look at astrology, this is the way that I've always looked at astrology, is that it's not just the astrology telling us what's going to happen in our lives, is when we understand what the astrology suggests might happen, because there's still a component of so many things being out of our control, how do we choose to meet it halfway? And that's very, very important because our lives give context to the astrology. Whenever I'm doing a reading with someone, it's not just me guessing who they are, what they do, what's going to happen. It's we need to have a conversation because this is a chart that is alive through you. Okay. So if anyone's interested in a reading, links are below. So here we have a full moon in Capricorn. Now, a moon in Capricorn, so a lot of times it can be described as something that is very, blue, moody, a little bit dark, very serious. And while some of those interpretations are true, I think they can be expressed in that way. A moon in Capricorn, at the end of the day, in its highest expression, is concerned with the integrity of what it's experiencing. So let me explain. The moon in the zodiac represents how we feel emotionally nurtured, taken care of. It represents in our chart, it gives a sense to our relationship to our mother or to women in our lives. It gives an insight to how home life was growing up. So there is an element of this is where I feel safe. This is where I don't feel safe. And here's why, right? Depending on the aspects that the moon is making. A moon in Capricorn, the way that it seeks to have a sense of safety, a sense of nurturing, a sense of unconditional love and trust, which the moon represents, in Capricorn is what are the hard, true facts about this? What am I looking at that works and doesn't? What is in my vicinity? What is in my reality that tells me that I am safe? And if something's not working, then we need to change it, right? We need to change it. A moon in Capricorn feels very safe when they know that they are taken care of financially, when they are taken care of with consistency, either through their own work or through the consistency of partnership in another. Consistency is key there. And so this full moon in Capricorn at 1 degree is highlighting what is inconsistent in our lives, what can no longer remain the same, what no longer feels like it provides us with the same sense of foundation that it used to before. And that will give us great insight as to this no longer feels reliable in my life. This is too inconsistent in my life. In true Capricorn fashion, this is going to have a lot to do with jobs or careers. It's going to have a lot to do with anything that has to do with the status quo or meeting some kind of responsibility. In terms of home, because we're talking about a full moon in Capricorn. For some people, they might find themselves needing to look for a home or really having the desire. And this is especially true if you've been thinking about moving, the undeniable desire of, okay, this is it. We really need to move. And here's what's going to happen. Or here's what the potential is to happen. From the first full moon of June 21st to the second full moon in Capricorn to July 21st, you're going to figure out why. It's going to make itself known. Whenever we have 2 full moons consecutively and one sign, that is the cosmos saying something here needs to end. And since we're talking about the moon, which is home, foundation, which is nurturance, where we feel safe, who feels like family, what feels unconditionally loving and caring in Capricorn is I trust that. I trust the consistency of that love, of that attention, of that home, of that job, right? I trust the consistency. I trust the groundedness in that connection to that thing, which provides me with something, which gives me something, because that is what Capricorn is concerned with. Now, when something is inconsistent, we will see it. If something is inconsistent in our lives, if there's a relationship that is inconsistent in our lives, we will see it, and we will have to make decisions around that honor our sense of stability and grounding. Okay, so what is the ruler of Capricorn? Saturn. What is Saturn doing? Saturn is at 19 degrees Pisces, getting ready to retrograde on June 29th. Why does this matter? Because that means that whatever is coming up to the surface right now, whatever comes up to the surface with the 2 full moons in Capricorn over the next 4 weeks, which means that the last 2 weeks of July, there's going to be a lot of movement based on these 2 full moons. At around that time, Saturn is going to go retrograde. So when Saturn goes retrograde, it represents a time of reconsidering our structures or rebuilding or saying, not this way, let me try it a different way. What is a way that feels safer? Because both Saturn and Capricorn in the zodiac tend to lean on the tried and true. They tend to lean on, again, what feels grounding, not for the sake of not taking risks, because Capricorn energy is actually quite the risk taker. Remember, it is a cardinal sign. It initiates things. But the difference between Capricorn, for instance, or Saturn energy and like Aries is that there is a lot more forethought. There's a lot more foresight as to, okay, this feels like a risk right now, but I trust myself and I understand the potential outcome of this. Whereas in Aries, perhaps Aries energy, there's not much forethought or much foresight. It's let's do it now. It's very different, right? So Saturn and Pisces is interesting because here we have 2 full moons that are going to illuminate what no longer works. Here are 2 full moons that are going to illuminate, this can't remain like this. My sense of home, I want it to feel like this, whatever this is for you. My sense of grounding, my sense of safety in this world, in the way that I make money, in the way that I support myself and my family needs to change. So Saturn in Pisces here, in its lowest expression, is the world is so heavy and so against me, Saturn, that I am a victim of it, Pisces. And its highest expression is I know that my life is my responsibility, Saturn, and I trust the divinity that exists within me and my connection to spirit that I will be guided through this, Pisces. So here we have a very different potential manifestation of Saturn and Pisces really helping guide these full moons in Capricorn because it rules them. And it turning retrograde, here's another thing. Saturn turning retrograde does slow things down. So let's say that you are someone who wants to move or who needs to move. Okay. And that's what manifests for you over the next 2 full moons in Capricorn. Saturn going retrograde might slow things down, but here's the thing. If you want to do things right, if you want your next home, for instance, your next apartment, whatever your next home is, to be better and feel differently than the one you are in now, why would you want to rush that process? Why would you want to rush just landing on anything? And, some people might say, well, what am I going to do? Be homeless? No, but there is always there's always a choice. There is always a different choice. There is always a solution. And we have to be willing to lean into it and look into that. Because Capricorn is a very resourceful sign. Because Capricorn, being the 10th sign of the zodiac, has had the experience of the 9 previous signs, which means it's been around the block. It doesn't get, life doesn't scare Capricorn easily, right? It's like, yeah, you know, stuff happens. All right, so what do I got to do? What do I have to figure out? But they're in a way of the understanding of this is just a part of life. And so here we get into the bigger picture of what we're actually experiencing. So if you've been following my forecast for the last couple of weeks, I'll keep talking about Gemini energy. Gemini energy is inviting us to have a different outlook, to have a different perspective of what we're capable of and of the potential of what our life can look like. Okay. So here with Jupiter and Gemini, we have 2 full moons in Capricorn saying something fundamental is going to change. It's going to end, right? Fundamental Capricorn, 2 full moons going to end. We're going to find out what that is over the next couple of weeks. Okay. But if we've learned anything about Gemini energy is how do I go within myself and at the very least, ask myself, how can I look at this situation through a different lens? What is this situation trying to teach me? What is the solution here that I don't yet see? And being open to that divine guidance. Here's why I say that, because again, at the time of this full moon, Saturn is at 19 degrees Pisces and Neptune is at 29 degrees Pisces. Technically, both Saturn and Neptune are within an orb of conjunction to one another. It's a wide conjunction, but it's a conjunction nonetheless. For those of you who are avid astrology followers, you know that we are moving towards a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is really significant because here we have the planet of dissolution and dissolving, which is Neptune, in the last sign of the zodiac, in a sign that it rules, which is Pisces, coming together with Saturn, which is the planet of structure, which is the planet of the status quo, of the way that things have been done for many, many, many years, in the sign of Pisces too, implying some structures, some of the way that we do things is coming to an end, and they're coming together slowly and slowly and slowly. So yes, Saturn will retrograde, it will move out of this wide conjunction to Neptune, but the first of 2 full moons in Capricorn find Saturn and Neptune within an orb of conjunction. Whatever these 2 full moons in Capricorn show us that needs to end, the way that we approach the new chapter cannot be the way that we have approached new beginnings in our lives before. That's what the Saturn and Neptune conjunction implies. So what can that look like? Okay, let's say that, you know, these 2 full moons come with a job change for you, right? And then the way that you start job hunting again, job searching again is, you know what? I can't do the same thing. I have been doing this career, this vocation, this job for the last 10, 15 years in the same way. I have enough knowledge, enough experience to ask for more. There is a dissolving Neptune of the idea that you have of yourself based on what you've built so far, Saturn, that is going to come to an end, Pisces. What does this imply? That it might take a little bit longer than it usually does for you to land another job. But there is an understanding that I can't possibly do the same thing for another 10, 15 years. I'm ready for more. I have so much more to give. I have so much more to share. I have a difference to make in the world, right? So let's say that this has to do with you moving. There are a lot of people that are moving into buying homes that are not just single family homes. There are a lot of people that are actually leaning into community, living with their parents, living with friends, living with siblings, right? Because of the cost of living, but I think it's because of Pluto and Aquarius. But again, we're approaching the next chapter of life differently. And it might just take a little bit longer, and that's okay. Because why would you want to rush the new chapter of your life if you're being given the cosmic opportunity to kind of start anew? And Neptune is at 29 degrees Pisces. Technically, both Saturn and Neptune are within an orb of conjunction to one another. It's a wide conjunction, but it's a conjunction nonetheless. For those of you who are avid astrology followers, you know that we are moving towards a Saturn-Neptune conjunction, which is really significant because here we have the planet of dissolution and dissolving, which is Neptune, in the last sign of the zodiac, in a sign that it rules, which is Pisces, coming together with Saturn, which is the planet of structure, which is the planet of the status quo, of the way that things have been done for many, many, many years, in the sign of Pisces too, implying some structures, some of. So at the time of the full moon, we also have a conjunction between Venus and Mercury in Cancer. Venus at 5 degrees Cancer, Mercury at 9 degrees Cancer. Okay, so Venus in Cancer is the love of home, the love of family, the love of those that feel like family, the love of comfort, the love of what's known and true. This is what feels safe. And Mercury there feels the same way, right? And what's interesting is that these two planets, Venus and Mercury, are actually creating a sextile to Mars in Taurus. Taurus, a sign also known for really loving the tried and true. This is what I know, this is what I love, this is what feels comfortable. Okay, so this is where I can see a little bit of resistance here, even though this is a sextile, right? So remember what I said earlier, every single placement, planet, sign, aspect has a higher expression and a lower expression. And sextiles are usually interpreted as really positive transits. But here's why I see it as a little bit of an issue when it comes to a full moon in Capricorn that's going to be followed by a second one. Okay. Sextiles are lovely. Sextiles, yes, they are an invitation to say, here's an opportunity for you to do something. Are you going to take it? Venus, Mercury, this is great. Venus, Mercury is great for communication, especially if it comes to negotiations, money, relationships, healing conversations, right? Especially in Cancer, because Mercury is communication, Venus is relationships, is money, it can be negotiations, and these two are together in the sign of Cancer. So here we are having either these thoughts or these conversations or these negotiations around home, sustainability, nurturing, thinking about the future, okay? The sextile to Mars and Taurus is a little bit of a reminder of take your time, don't rush, slow and steady, know your worth, act from a place of worth and not from a place of desperation. A lot of times Aries energy on its own can act from a place of desperation because it just wants to move, do without any kind of thought. But Mars and Taurus is, I'm going to act from a place of worth. I'm going to act from a place of groundedness and peace and sense of value within myself. So when the placements in Cancer, when Venus and Mercury in Cancer create a sextile to Mars and Taurus, there's an understanding. I have an idea, I have a vision of what I want, of what's going to bring me a sense of home, nurture, and safety in the long run, and I'm going to take my time. Okay. The lower expression of the sextile is saying, I don't want to do it. I don't want it. I just, this feels too good. This is like being in a home that is chaotic or living in an apartment with chaotic neighbors, and you have an opportunity to move and you don't because of other fears. Because here's the thing, these two full moons in Capricorn are going to show you how you have to level up. But what are the placements in Pisces going to remind you of? That whenever life asks you to level up, life is also going to provide you with the means, with the abundance for that leveling up. We have to start remembering that life always works in our favor, not against us. And so when there is an ending that is inevitable, we have to be okay with that. We have to take that as a sign of, all right, I guess this chapter's come to an end, right? Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not here sitting saying that I'm just sitting here worry-free and that I don't go into that space. But the time that I spend in that space is so much shorter than it was a few years ago. One, thanks to lots of therapy, and two, because life has shown me way too many times, time and time again, that I always have what I need when I need it. That I'm always provided for and supported in ways that are unbeknownst to me. And if I can't remember that, if I can't remember how much life has supported me in the past, what's the point? The point is to remember those miraculous moments and to say, this is what it's about. Life is about experiencing these magical moments and understanding them and appreciating them, because that's spirit saying, I've got you. I've got you. Don't forget that, right? So back to that Cancer Taurus connection, the sextile can bring so much comfort to where you are at that you feel no sense of urgency or impulse to make anything happen. I don't know that there are many people that are going to be able to just stay in a situation because 2 full moons in one sign, especially in a sign of Capricorn, which is the sign of taking responsibility for your life, is going to bring an ending. It's going to somewhat force you. And sextiles don't necessarily represent resistance, but they do represent the potential for a very blasé outlook on life, or pretending that you are not seeing what you're seeing. This is not the time for that. This is not the time for that, because you're being given an opportunity to finally step into the space that you've probably wanted to step into for a long time. And here's why. Because we have to remember that Pluto is retrograde and it's going to come back to 29 degrees of Capricorn. Here we are again with an emphasis on Capricorn energy. Capricorn energy over the last couple of years, over the last 4 years, has represented the end of fundamental structures internally and externally in our lives that have needed to come to an end in order for a rebirth, for a renewal, for an awakening of the collective and of the self. So here we are, once again, 2 full moons in Capricorn, and Pluto making its very, very, very last stop in the sign of Capricorn at 29 degrees Capricorn. That's later on in the year, but it doesn't mean it doesn't count. It's the very last time that it's going to be in Capricorn in the rest of our lives. So these next couple of months are going to tell us a lot about something that needs to end, that we have been wanting for a long time. But for some reason or other, life happens. Maybe we haven't been ready. We just haven't done it. And this is the invitation to do that. Okay. All right. So then we have Jupiter and Gemini at 6 degrees Gemini, still within an orb of a trine to Pluto in Aquarius. Okay. So we have Pluto in Aquarius, which represents a significantly different future, so different that we can't really fathom what that looks like. But here's the thing. Jupiter in Gemini is the expansion Jupiter of possibilities, Gemini, because Gemini is the sign of the zodiac that reminds us there is always another way. There is always another possibility. Well, what if we looked at it this way? Well, what if we, research here? What if we asked over there? Pluto is actually quite a beautiful planet because Pluto, yes, it can be scary and terrifying to experience a significant Pluto transit, okay? I've had clients go through their Pluto squares. I experienced a Pluto transit over my sun, and Pluto was stationed directly on my sun in Capricorn for almost an entire year. I understand the experience of Pluto. But if there is one thing that transit of Pluto going over my natal sun taught me, is that the depth of me, the profundity of me, is where my power lies. That it is nothing outside of me, that it is nothing that can validate me outside of me. And that depth and profundity is the connection to the source within. Why am I sharing this with you? Because there's a lot of activation of Pluto in Aquarius. And it doesn't just represent AI and technology. Yes, of course, it represents all of those things. But when we think about Pluto at an individual sense, we're talking about, yes, experiencing some discomfort. For some people, experiencing some truly transformative things in their lives. But it is all so that you can understand that your power, that your depth is the root of your power. And we cannot get to that degree of depth without being forced to, because we are creatures of habit and we like to be comfortable, right? And Pluto is the planet of the shadow, of depth psychology. So it's going to get in there. What does that mean for us right now? Especially because Pluto is going to later in the year retrograde back into Capricorn. It's going to show you how much grip you still have on old parts of yourself, your old life, your old identity. It's going to bring you face to face with them. Now, here's the thing. We've had enough experience, again, over the last 4 years of a very activated Pluto in Capricorn. I don't think that it's going to feel as difficult as the last couple of years, but we will still be shown what are some of the ties that we still have? What are some of the situationships, the narratives, the family relationships, all kinds of things that we're still tied to because we feel like, well, I have to. Well, I'm going to end up alone. Well, they didn't mean it. There is something really significant that we have to cut the cord with if we want to move forward. And in true Pluto fashion, you have to understand that when you do that, when you give yourself the gift of going through that discomfort, on the other side, there is a liberation. There is in fact a brand new beginning for you, but you have to give yourself the opportunity to do that. And Jupiter in Gemini is the reminder. You really think this is the only way? You really think this is the only person? You really think this is the only place in the world where you can live? That's what this is showing us. That's what this is showing us, because that's a part of the old way that we used to do things. There is an element of surrendering and trusting in our divine mind. Because the fact of the matter is that when we do tap into ourselves in a profound way, we find that there is a lot of divine wisdom in there, but we have to be willing to look within. We have to be willing to find moments of stillness and surrender to that knowing, surrender to that guidance, surrender to that wisdom. And here's the thing, that guidance and that wisdom isn't always linear. Sometimes it says nothing. Sometimes all it says is just be here. Be here. You don't have to do anything right now. You don't have to fix anything right now. Right? And here's another thing. This full moon in Capricorn is going to initiate something for you. It's going to make something clear for you. And you will know what to do along the way. You will understand what you need to do along the way. And if you don't, then it becomes your responsibility to ask, to research, to ask for help, to delegate, to do all of those things. Okay. Another thing that we want to keep in mind here is that this is the first of 2 full moons. So think of this first full moon as showing you something between now and the second full moon. So over the next 4 weeks, revelations, this is what's ending, this is where I'm going, this is what I need to do. And then from that second full moon on July 21st and those last 2 weeks of July, things will amp up a little bit more in terms of action, in terms of you taking action. So just to give you a timeline and just to give you a heads up as to how the energy might feel in that moment, okay? Also, for those of you who are interested in spiritual coaching, I have a link where we can chat for 30 minutes, see if, if we're a fit. And I love, love, love coaching. I love spiritual coaching. It's truly a beautiful way to connect with people, to remind people of the source of the divinity that exists within them. So I work a lot, as you see me explain here, I'm very practical with things, right? And I know that spirituality can be practical, and that's how I do my coaching. So we identify any blocks that you have. I do a lot of somatic exercises because I think our body is an incredible communicator. I teach you how to tell the difference between what your mind is telling you, what your body and soul are telling you. So currently, I have a 12-week program going on. So again, if you want to chat about it, book a call, let's chat, let's see if we're a fit. Other than that, please let me know where you're from and write it in the comments, and I'll talk to you next week. So much love to you all.